All right. Well, welcome back to another conversation around 529 plans. So last year we did a video and we talked about some of the biggest myths and misconceptions around 529 plans. We talked about what they are, what they aren't, and really how flexible they've become over time. And we got a lot of great feedback. So we thought because people were surprised about what these accounts can actually do, and people thought it was very helpful that we should revisit the topic. It's May, so our topic is 529 plans and education savings. And we thought we would talk about some smart ways that families can use 529 plans, especially with some of the newer rule changes, and use it as a planning opportunity and talk about some things that maybe you're not aware of. So I'm happy that Jill's joining me because Jill deals with 529s with a lot of our clients. And it's a topic that she's familiar with as well, with some of these changes that have been happening over the last couple of years.
Thanks, Ryan. So, yes, a lot of people still think of 529 plans as just for college, but they've really evolved into a much broader education planning tool.
Yeah, I think one thing that probably definitely hasn't changed is the benefit of starting early. So we talk about this a lot with all different kinds of investing, but the earlier you start saving, the more time you're giving your investments to grow. And in the 529 plan, you're growing those investments tax free if they're used for qualified education expenses. I think probably one of the things we see pretty commonly, Jill, is that they procrastinate because they think maybe they overthink it, or they think if I don't have a lot of money to get started, I can't really open the account or I can't fund it.
Right. So, even small, consistent contributions over time can add up. I feel like some people may be hesitant to open an account because in their minds they think that they need to have a significant amount to start with. But really, if you just have, like, let's say, even 500 or $1,000 to begin, that's more than enough to open a plan, and building that gradually is still meaningful.
Right. Another big reminder, people a lot of times think 529 plans are just for traditional four-year colleges. So, probably one of the most common misconceptions that we hear is that 529 plans only help people who are saving for their education, or, in most cases, their children's education, that are on that four-year university track. And I think that's one of the things that most people get tripped up on.
Right, definitely is. Like we said earlier today, it's not just about college plans. It could be used towards paying for trade school, vocational programs, and graduate school, and even some K-12 tuition expenses. So that really matters because the families are approaching education differently these days. So not everyone is following the same path.
Right. Yeah. So you can save, you can invest, and whatever direction your education plans take, these 529 plans give you a lot of flexibility. And speaking of flexibility, one of the biggest updates recently, I think we talked about this last time, but it's really the continued rollout of the 529 to Roth IRA rollover provision. That's got a lot of attention. A lot of people are excited. So, under certain rules, if you have unused assets in your 529 plan, they can potentially be rolled into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary. Now there are some limitations and requirements, things like the account age needs to have been open for at least 15 years, and the contribution limits still matter. You can't just fund all the money. You still have to adhere to the Roth IRA contribution limits. But overall, it adds a lot of flexibility to the conversation.
Right. Well, one of the biggest concerns people always have is what if we save too much? How much is too much? And historically, that uncertainty caused some families to hesitate. So I think it's helped people view 529 plans a little differently. And instead of worrying about locking your money away, families are realizing these accounts may offer more long-term planning opportunities than what they originally thought.
Yeah, speaking of planning, that's another good one. A trend that we're seeing more and more is really more financial planning using the 529s and looking at 529 plans as part of, a long-term strategy. And one of the trends that we see is grandparents are becoming more and more involved in education
Mhm.
planning. I think as access expands and more families have become aware of how these accounts work, and how they can benefit them, they've actually, worked really well as sort of a multi-generational planning conversation, planning tool. So for any of you listening, talk to your grandparents, talk to your parents about, using the 529, contributing maybe to your 529 or to your children's 529 as part of a longer term, strategic planning conversation, and see how they can maybe play a role in that and help fund those accounts for the future.
So, also, one important thing to know is that the account owner has full control of the account and has the ability to change the beneficiaries if circumstances change. So, the account owner also can be changed over time as well as your family grows. So, that flexibility can be really valuable for families.
Yeah, and I think, talking about long-term strategic thinking is, brings up another point is, have a plan, have a financial plan, right? Probably one of the biggest considerations is that these 529 plans are great. They're great for helping with education expenses, but having a strategy around it, having a larger financial plan that this is going to play a part of is a really big deal, and it's super important. And it's one thing that people overlook. If I have a 401k, if I have a 529, I'm doing great. But have a larger financial plan around that, because those accounts are going to play a piece of, that strategy. They're going to play into that strategy. Education planning has changed a lot over, especially the last, 3 to 5 years, but it's changed a lot over time, and these accounts are changing with it, and it's giving families more flexibility, giving families more options than they had previously. So it's important to have that, sort of long-term financial strategy in place. So, if you have questions about building a financial plan, we can help you with that. If you have questions around 529 plans, how that might fit into the broader picture or your specific plan, obviously we'd be happy to help. So reach out and let us know how we can help you get started with that.
So, hopefully, this was a helpful update on 529 plans. If you want, you can check out our last 529 video of myths and versus facts. And thank you for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe for upcoming videos.
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.